Welcome back to the Jujutsu Kaisen Comparison Series. Now on Season 2, Episode 5. Last episode we left off on page 6 of Chapter 76, but considering as this was also right as the 1-year time skip kicked off, it's timed pretty well. And within that time, Gojo's gotten a pretty good grasp of his technique, Limitless now living up to its name as he's even harnessed the power of AI to determine the threat levels of incoming projectiles around the clock. But more importantly, in the anime alone, he's developed some sick pencil flipping abilities. Funny how the guy who animated this said he had no such skill himself. Would have fooled me. If I was Shoko or Geto, I'd be impressed. But you might have noticed that Geto's looking a lot more run down nowadays. Interesting how the anime instead kept Gojo far away from his friend in this shot. The foreshadowing from episode 1 is finally starting to come into play here. Oh, and speaking of episode 1, you may remember that I said that beginning sequence with Geto was anime exclusive, and canonically speaking it kind of is, but I didn't mention that speech by him during it came from this future chapter in the manga. Visually speaking though, the only thing it has in common was him swallowing a curse. The walk through the alleyway and his walk with the girls is all its own, though the meetup with Geto will be seen later in this episode with different visuals. But first things first, Geto needs to stop fighting that war within himself. A war that's getting closer to its conclusion because thanks to the sound of the shower eerily sounding like those clapping shit stains, he couldn't help but profile all the jujutsuless monkeys into one hatred-filled basket. But he's not quite there yet, and like anyone who's conflicted, that's what talking to other people is for. Haibara would seem like the perfect person to speak with given his infectious positivity, but his simple outlook doesn't really make him a good therapist. But luckily for Geto, that's where the sensei of everyone's favorite brother comes into play. After he warmed up to her a bit, he came to find that her goals for fixing the root cause of the cursed energy problem quite enlightening, especially the part about how sorcerers don't give birth to curses but only humans do. This lesson vocalized a deadly idea that's likely been swirling in Geto's head for quite a while. Fitting that the anime made it start raining outside as soon as this happened. But Yuki didn't judge Geto for having these thoughts, she just told him that he needs to choose a side on this warpath of his. Will he put his energy toward embracing these genocidal thoughts, or will he work on finding a healthier way to logically internalize his hatred? I'm sure that Geto knew that option B was way less ethically ambiguous, but unfortunately Yuki gave Geto a meaning to accompany option A. Not only to satisfy his hatred, but to also end the marathon game of curse extermination, which sadly brought an end to Haibara's life. By that point, Geto only needed to see the ugly side of humanity one more time and his transformation would be complete. A lot had been building up to the day that Geto finally snapped, and it's a day that we now know to be the 19th of September 2007, which is hardly the only new thing the anime tells us, because while this report does use information from the small black blocks of text from the manga, there is a bunch of extra new nuggets of information here. On top of getting more dates, such as when Geto was dispatched and when the investigation proceeded, we also learned a lot more about Geto's mission parameters, such as how disappearances in this village date back to the 1990s but was likely only brought to Jujutsu High's attention on September 13th, 2007. 5 days before Geto would head off to investigate. All these events happened relatively nearby to one another, which is probably why it didn't take long for Geto to find and eliminate the threat, before burning down about 70% of the village. Naturally, the motive for these actions is listed as unknown, but this report does inch close to hinting at the existence of a sorcerer family living within the village. There's also a lot more pieces of information here, but let me be honest, my Japanese is not that great, and Crunchyroll did not translate this, so if there's any native speakers who would like to add to this, let us all know in the comments down below. Besides that document, everything else is pretty faithful, but I would like to note how symbolic it is that Geto's shadow splits into two here, but merges into one at the moment he decides which path to take. That one flame of himself is no longer, and when hearing of this secondhand, of course Gojo could hardly believe it. Doubly so when he heard that Geto also killed his parents. It was such shocking news that even Yaga couldn't believe it. Gojo even injured his fist this time around. Still, this reaction was to be expected, and knowing this, it's probably why Geto decided to approach Shoko first. Though after her phone call to Gojo, it didn't take much longer for him to confront his best friend. This time with words from behind Geto's back as opposed to meeting him head on. As a matter of fact, for most of their back and forth dialogue in the anime, Geto keeps his back turned to his friend, and only meets his eye line when asking why Gojo Satoru is the strongest, which of course is followed by him turning away to leave anyways. Certainly this is a man who could defeat him, but compared to the person who just killed his parents, Gojo just doesn't have it in him to flick his finger, because that thing kills people, and I'm pretty sure Gojo didn't want to do to his friend what he did to Star Religious headquarters a year ago, which funnily enough still hasn't been repaired yet. But Geto's about to do a lot more irreparable damage to this association by setting a mighty heavy example to both the kid kids and followers gathered there. And just like that, we're left with the Geto we have fully become acquainted with from Jujutsu Kaisen 0. So all that's left in this timeline now is for Gojo to recruit Megumi, a kid who bears a shocking resemblance to his father, and just as independent. More or less, this kid already knows how he wants to live, and that is by doing anything he can to keep his loved ones happy. Gojo made it pretty obvious that the Zenin clan can't do that for him, so the only option left was for him to become a Jujutsu sorcerer himself, as he now is in the current day. What a great way to end the arc. Gojo and Geto went through some crazy stuff back in the day, and while it inevitably pushed Geto to the path of genocide, Gojo had the strength not only to push past it, but to even look after the enemy's kid. Gojo sure loves his students. Students that we'll finally start seeing more of as this chapter goes on, but as the episode will stop right here, so will we. Up next is the Shibuya incident arc, and oh my god, can I not wait to cover that. If you guys are looking forward to it too, and you enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a like, share it with a friend, and maybe get subscribed for more content like this. Thanks for sticking with me all this time, everyone. And a special shout out to all my patrons. If you guys want to see my reactions to these episodes, then head on over there for some extra content. But until next time, I hope every single one of you has a fantastic day. And as always, this is Registry, signing off. Take care, everyone.